Hello, thank you for being in a new video. This time we have an unboxing of the iPhone 16. Let's get started. This is the most basic model of all the iPhone 16. So let's see what it has to offer. Although its launch price seems to me remarkably high considering the features and specifications that we will find in this product. In Mexico, it has been launched at a price of 19,999 pesos. On the screen you see the reference price in dollars just to give you an idea, but remember that the prices here are not the same as over there. Come with me to take this device out of its box to know its proposal. And we're already turning it on, so we'll see a little more detail in a moment. For now, let's take a look at what else comes in the box, which truth be told will be very little. We're going to find in this case the cable, which one positive thing we can mention is that it's a braided cable. So it will be a little bit harder to break. It feels of good quality, although a little bit short. But remember that it has USB-C on both sides. And in this case, we're also going to find the key here to remove the SIM card tray. And finally, we're just going to find these blades, which come with a very nice design. There's no denying that. The fact that they give us sheets with very rounded corners instead of completely straight sheets definitely gives an attractive touch to this device. But it's simply the same regulatory information and the like that we'll find on other smartphones. It doesn't come with stickers. Remember, that's not being mandated by Apple anymore. But if you buy it from their official store, you might get to order some stickers if you're physically in the store. But it's definitely a very ugly unboxing experience. Very little content. But not to bore us, let's invite the past generation to compare the changes and improvements, if any. Well, I already have this device configured, so let's get to know it a little closer with its different specifications. We will find a thickness of 7.8 millimeters and weighs 170 grams. Of course, for those who are looking for a comfortable, very compact and very light device, this option can become very attractive. Obviously, in many other aspects, it is going to be a very short, very simple experience compared to the price. But it is true that it is an extremely comfortable device to hold in the hand, and it's also very pretty. It's really very nice. In this case, we're going to find a glass back cover, but with an infusion of color. I think that's why it has such a nice matte effect. I have a teal edition, but it's also available in many other colors. It's some of the nicest looking stuff you're going to find. Even the design of the cameras is extremely nice and pretty, so aesthetically it's a very nice device. It also has the IP level of resistance against water, tested to a depth of 6 meters. So, in that aspect, it doesn't disappoint at all. A new addition would be the camera button, but we all know by now that it's not really as useful as it should be. Virtually all the controls that you can get with this slider, you can also have them on the screen and much more convenient. So it really ends up being practically a useless button experience that is going to be present there. Yes, you can display it at times, but even for taking the picture, it's a much more awkward scenario to have to slide your finger to this part instead of just pressing the shutter. So the camera button, I wouldn't consider it a buying factor because I really don't think you're going to use it. At least that in my case. The screen has a diagonal of 6.1 inches and offers us a resolution of 2556 by 1179 pixels to achieve Apple's favorite pixel density of 460 pixels per inch. However, that's a 60 Hz display. Definitely that in such an expensive full 2024 device, it is unacceptable to see 60 Hz. If you've never used a 90 or 120 Hz screen, you won't even notice it, I'm pretty sure. But if you've used 120 or 90 Hz screens before, this will seem like a complete mockery. The movements don't look as fluid as they should. In this price range, it's definitely something that disappoints tremendously. It obviously incorporates the dynamic island, and it's a display that overall is going to have a very good brightness level. Its maximum peak is 1600 nits viewing HDR content, or even outdoors it can go up to 2000 nits. But it also has a very good low brightness of only 1 nit. Although through software in a normal way it does not lower its brightness that much. For that you should activate the extra dimming in the accessibility options. And we will find stereo sound with a speaker on the bottom, another in the earpiece area for calls, and the front camera will be 12 megapixels with f-aperture 1.9 and autofocus. I think it is a front camera that is going to meet a very good quality because they have good light entry, large pixels and autofocus. Everything we could ask from a front camera. This is possibly one of the strongest points of this device. In fact, here I have a preview of a backlit picture, and note that before taking the picture, it already shows me very well balanced the light area. There are other devices that this cloud area shows it completely white before capturing the picture. So it is very good. Of course, after taking the picture, it also takes advantage of the XDR technology that the screen has. Notice that without this effect, you would see a slightly duller area in the highlights area, but notice how the screen emits an impressive amount of light in these areas to give you a very realistic display of your photos in these environments. So the front-facing camera is definitely one of the best things about this device. It is one of the points with which it can really compete and beat many competitors in this same price range, but in many other sections it is very weak. In the back we will find the 12 megapixel ultra-wide camera with f-aperture 2.2, in this case with autofocus so that it also serves as a macro camera, and then the main camera of 48 megapixels with f-aperture 1.6, very bright, has stabilization by displacement within the sensor, and applying a crop on this camera also gives us photographs like those that would give us a telephoto lens 2x of 12 megapixels. So in a way, let's say they are two cameras that work as four, because this one works as macro and ultra wide, and this one works as main and telephoto, although obviously a short range telephoto. But it's not so bad until you consider the price, because obviously at this price all other manufacturers are obliged to offer us a 3x optical zoom telephoto camera and many more things, but in this case it's still not as advanced as it should be. The ultra-wide camera definitely has good quality and above all good range. In that sense, there is no complaint from me. The main camera is also going to give us good quality and good colors overall. The photography consumes 2x with a crop inside the sensor, really, if it maintains the good quality it promises. So yes, we could say that in some ways it could replace a telephoto camera, but only at this setting, as at maximum zoom it will still fall short. You are now looking at the picture consumes 5x, and here you start to notice that it does not have a dedicated telephoto camera, and finally the maximum zoom in this case is 10x, and as I tell you, you notice in this case that it does not have a telephoto camera, so the weakest point in terms of photography will probably be the zoom. Fortunately, in terms of video recording quality, there are no complaints because it can record in 4K at 60 frames per second, both with the ultra-wide camera and with the main camera, and also with the front camera. So it has great capabilities. On the battery, Apple never shares a specific figure but promises up to 22 hours of video playback. But speaking of downloaded video, if you are going to play streaming video, they promise up to 18 hours. But the truth is that in this case, having such a small battery, I estimate that it is going to be a device that is not going to give you a good autonomy because it is quite small. However, for a more accurate and specific test, I ask you to wait for the video review, where I will give you figures that we can compare with past generations. It supports 25-watt charging with MagSafe wireless. By cable, you can connect a 20 or 30-watt charger, and they promise 50% charge in 30 minutes. That first charging period is really very fast, although after that it can take another full hour to finish charging. So consider that Apple's fast charging works that way. Only the first half hour will be very fast, after that it can get slower. In this case, it comes with iOS 18, and Apple advertises it supposedly designed for Apple Intelligent. And yes, indeed, it will have Apple Intelligence support, but as of today it only works configured with US English. Later it will work with English from other regions, and later it will work in Spanish. As of today, I wouldn't consider that a buying factor because you're not really going to use it if it's not available in your language. Apple also doesn't officially share its RAM figure, but in terms of storage, just turned on without having set it up or downloaded anything, it showed 21.11 gigabytes used. It has 128 gigabytes. This for the most basic model, although there are also much more complete versions of up to 512 gigabytes, but they are also more expensive. And finally, the processor is the Apple at 18. Here are its single-core scores. We see 3,381 points, and in multi-core 8,319 points, while in Antutu it reached 1,612,639 points. It is undoubtedly a processor of very good quality with good power. In that sense, it does not disappoint. But let me tell you now about the changes in this generation, considering that here we have the younger brother. There are really few changes at the aesthetic level. Obviously, the change is evident. We have a new camera layout, even a new color palette. That will be the most drastic change you are going to notice, because in the rest of the sections they are very similar devices. Another addition will be the camera button that I mentioned, which for me would not be a relevant factor because in general I do not think you will use it much, but yes, it is another change that was not in the last generation and now it is. Also, the screen arrives protected with a new generation of ceramic shield, which according to Apple is 50% more resistant than the last generation. It is a change that goes unnoticed if you just take a look, but it is present. Another change that goes a little unnoticed is the processor, which is a natural evolution. Before we had the Apple A16, now we have the Apple A18. But in addition to the increase in power, obviously the Apple A18 will have more capabilities for everything that has to do with artificial intelligence. Although this is something you should consider in the future because, as I say, Apple Intelligence is not yet available in a lot of languages, but it will be ready for when it is available, which will not be the case with this model. But basically that's the only difference. So I would really go more for the iPhone 15, which you can probably already find it cheaper. I think the iPhone 16 doesn't offer enough evolution to go for this model, but you decide. For now, those are more or less the differences. Maybe I'm missing some. Yes, here's the new action button, which was previously just the switch. So now you can customize it for a few more things. This one could still become a bit more useful than the camera button, but I don't know if it's relevant enough of a change from one generation to the next that you'd rather buy the new model. I leave it up to you to consider. For now, we've reached the end of this unboxing. Remember that soon we will have the full review where I will show you many more tests. I hope you liked this video. If you did, you know you can let me know, and see you next time. Essa edição da 7 for Podcast Tibalt.